All right. So yeah, I just wanted to show how, you know, just to do like some of the labs, because a lot of you, this is your first time working with objects. Um, all right. So let's take this one. So you want to create a class called bundle.py, bundle, right, in the bundle.py file, and then we have this different functionality. So just to, we can create a new folder called laundromat, and then cd into that. And then let's touch, we could really, kind of build this thing with like the source directory and even like tests, right? And now we have these two folders. And then maybe in the source directory is where we'll have the bundle.py. And then we can have the console.py here to like be able to play around with it. So if we start our code editor, in source, really the main thing here is just class bundle. Sorry, to start. I just put pass there. And then in console, we'll say from the source dot bundle import bundle. Right? So we're just importing this class. All right? And if we have access to the class, then we can create instances of a bundle, I believe. Like this is really all we need to do this. So I'll just create I'll create like we'll just run our console dash, so python 3 dash I console.py. What will that do? That'll run this file. This file will look for the source.bundle module, and in that module we'll import this class bundle, and then I can create, see that, like instances of the bundle. And you can see kind of here, it tells you where it's coming from. Source, bundle, module, bundle class, right? And from there, we can just kind of build out this functionality. Charges based on weight, anything 5 pounds or under is $10, and then $150 for everything over 5 pounds. Let's just put that in a comment. If it's 5 pounds or less, it's $10. So here we'll say like the price, and we know that we need this keyword self if we're defining a method inside a class. And we can say if we're going to say, like, I guess we'll assume that it has a weight or something, like a bundle has a weight. And you can see that's what's happening here, is we create a bundle, give that bundle a weight, and assume that it then when we run this method, it has a price. So what that means is, imagine we have we can maybe put, like, maybe we can copy and paste this into the console, right? If our console, if we have a bundle, have a weight, and then we can do second bundle dot price, and we know that should return to us 14.5. So this price method should be looking at the weight. So self.price, if self.weight is less than 10, right, then return, it's less than 5, then return 10. Otherwise, one charge $1.50 for every pound over 5 pounds. So it's $10. So once it's plus, say it's 6 pounds, we want it to be $11.50. So it would be the weight, self.weight, minus 5, right? So this is like the amount of weight over 5 times by 150, 1.5. We want to return this too. So if it's less than 5 pounds, we return 10. If it's over 5 pounds, we return the amount of weight over 5 it is, times by 1.5, plus the 10, I believe. Right? So we can practice this by running this if you want. So to do this, we'll have to exit out of my console and then run it again, right? Because we changed our code here. So we need to reload it. So we'll run this. It's just going to run this file, which will load the bundle class. And the bundle class now gives instances this functionality. It gives it this function. And then this will initialize a new bundle and set the weight to 8. So we run this. If we type in, we should see second bundle.dunderdict. We see it has a weight of 8. Right? And now we can call .price. And we get 14.5, which is what we wanted. One thing to show you is that remember you can put a breakpoint here. So, it's gonna depend on what part of the if-else statement it hits. Like the weight is 8 here. So if you put the breakpoint here, it's never gonna hit it because this only occurs when the weight is less than 5. And right now the weight is over 5. But if you put the breakpoint here, we run Python 3, and now how are we going to hit this thing? Well, we just initialized a bundle, we set the weight equal to 8, and now if we call this method, second bundle.price, now we're in the breakpoint, line 8, right here. And now we can dig around, you can type self. We're inside this method, right? So self is the bundle object that has the weight of 8. So we're inside this thing, right? And now you can reproduce the code if you want to play around with it. 10 plus self.weight, so that's 8. 8 minus 5 is 3. 3 times by 1.5 is 4.5 plus 10. That's where we get the 14.5, right? So right now you're inside the method call, right? So that's why self is that particular instance, because we're in the middle of this second bundle.price method call. And I can press continue, and now we're back in this console.py file. All right. And if you want to get rid of the breakpoints, you have to delete them and then run this thing again. Questions about any of that material? Right, so we imported, we said from source.bundle, import the bundle. Then here, we don't have to do this here, but just to save time, when we run this console.py file, it'll create a new bundle and then set the weight equal to 8. Right, and then we can just run the price. And if you want to turn this into a test, right, then it's the same thing basically. You'll write a code. You'll write code. So and it'll be called test bundle.py, right? And we're gonna run this. We're gonna run it from here. We're gonna run PyTest from here, which means that we want to say something like from source, because it's from this folder. So from source dot bundle, import bundle, and then we'll write a test. Test price. Well, what are the scenarios? Test price returns 10 if weight is less than 5. Price returns 10 if weight less than 5. And now here we'll create the scenario such that we can test this thing. So we create a bundle. We set the bundle.weight to be less than 5, right? Bundle.weight equals 4, for example. And what do we want to check? Well, we know at least this part of the functionality works if we can assert that the price equals 10. So here we're testing that the price returns 10 if the weight is less than 5, right? And now we can run PyTest. PyTest, this will import the class. It will create a new instance, set the weight, and then call the method, right? And that should return 10. And it breaks. No module named source. Let's see. Why is that? Oh, I know why. because we forgot, as always, to put this dunder init.py. Let's see if that does it. And that works. So we forgot to put this file in the folder, as always. And just remember, like, same thing as always, you can put breakpoints everywhere. So you can put a breakpoint here. You can put a breakpoint in your test file. And just like keep track of where you are. So if I run this, where am I? I'm in this function, line 8. So we're right here. This is before we called the method. So we can look at what bundle is. Do like bundle.dunderdict, and the weight is 4, right? Because we just set that there. And then once we go to here, now we're going to be inside the method call. So we should look inside, and we'll be paused right here, right? So it's like this thing's going to call this method and bring me inside of here. So let's type continue. Now we're inside this method call, right? How did we get there again? It's just running this code, and it's saying bundle.price, call this method. Cool, it called the method, and then it hit the breakpoint. And it's saying, okay, what's self at this point? Self is going to be the object that receives the method call, the object to the left of the dot. So self is this particular bundle, right? Because this is the method we're inside of, and we're calling the method on this object. Right? So if I look at what self.weight is, it should be 4 because it was defined here. So we do self.dunderdict. We see we got 4 because we're talking about this particular object. And that's why it will return 10 and pass. We do ask you to, like, one of the things later on is like, okay, refactor the code. And that's essentially about like having an init function. And here, the init function is about, well, what do you know when you drop off a bundle, right? Like we gave that example with when you drive the car off the lot, or when the car comes out of the factory, like it has to have a color, right? With the bundle, like the day that you dropped it off, the weight, right? They weigh the thing if in the laundromat, but you don't know the pickup day. Like that's happening at a later point in time. So here, the attributes you would have in init would be like the weight and like the drop-off day, right, and things like that, and maybe the drop-off month. And then you would just do self.weight equals the weight that's passed through, self.drop-off day is the drop-off day, and self.drop-off month. Okay, so once you do this means you're going to have to, if you want to create a bundle, you're going to have to specify all these things every time, right? So you only want to, you're kind of like restricting the object. You're saying this is what the object needs to be created. So you only really want to do it for things that you're going to know when you create that bundle. So you want to think about like the domain. So, if I run these tests again, by the way, it's going to break, right? Why does it break? Because we'll look at the code. So test bundle.py line 4. We go to line 4. We're creating a bundle, but now we updated it so that we need the weight, the drop-off day, and the drop-off month, right? So we're going to have to specify these every time we create a bundle. So the weight we can take was 5, right? Or 10. Oh, let's say it's 4. Now the drop-off day is Monday. So I guess this is a Monday. And the drop-off month, I forget exactly how the lab asked for it. It's maybe like October. And now you don't need this anymore because we're specifying the weight over here. We can just run this again. It still passes because now we're setting the weight over here. All right. But the point is, for the init, is that you really want to think about like, what do you need, right? What do you know when this instance is created? So that's why like we would have maybe the weight, the drop-off day, and the drop-off month, right? Like that's what we'll know when the cashier enters this thing into the system, right? Or the launder, enters this into the system. But that person doesn't know the pickup day. Like that's up to you. Like whenever you come by the next day, in the next week, So that will come at a later time. Questions about this stuff? Anything to clear up here? Sure. All right, well, obviously take a break. We have more labs on this coming up, so more practice with this. All right, so let's come back at, we'll come back. We'll come back at 6:30, all right? I'll see y'all then. Have a good one. Enjoy your dinner. Bye, gang. Okay, so you have this object lifecycle campaign lab. And then you can see this test campaign, all right? And you can, start to see from the very beginning, right? It's expecting that there's a class called campaign in here. And you can, let's see how far we can get just by reading the error messages. So we'll run PyTest, and it says, okay, we cannot import the campaign from the campaign module. That makes sense. Just do class campaign, pass, and then let's see what happens. And now we see this issue of campaign takes no arguments, right? Which makes sense. Like, we're trying to pass through an argument here. Like, if we start from the beginning, all right, this should take an argument. And then, but currently, we obviously don't do that. So that has to do with the init function. And the other thing to start to see when you're reading this is basically like a before and after. So we start with this campaign. We're building like this new campaign. And then after kind of essentially doing nothing, like after initializing the instance, we already get a budget of 800. So where does that budget come through? Like, it comes through, that's the argument that we're passing through right here. So whatever this argument is should kind of like set a property of like this budget property equal to 800. So let's see if we can do that. So in other words, we need to, we get this thing, the campaign takes no arguments. So the way to fix this is to do def dunder init. We know we always need to start with self if you're in a function, if you're in a class, right? And now this would take, you could put like budget here. Let's just put pass, see what happens. So again, I'm being very deliberate about just fixing what this is complaining about. It says it doesn't take any arguments, so fine, I'll give it an argument, right? And then run PyTest. And now, if we do this, we can see it says campaign object has no attribute budget, right? So the only thing that happens, so it's breaking here on line 9. So it's calling campaign.budget and it's saying, oh, well, there is no attribute budget. And nothing really happens other than we pass through this 800. So we need to, it's complaining about no attribute budget. We'll give it 1. Self.budget equals, and this is where it kind of makes sense. Like, this should be the budget that we're passing through here, right? That's kind of what it's saying. That's what I mean. Like, you're kind of reading a before and after. Like, before this is nothing exists, then somehow through passing through this argument, we have an after of this budget property. Let's put a breakpoint here. So do self.budget equals the budget you pass through. I'll put a breakpoint here too. So what happens? I'm just concerned about this breakpoint. All right. Well, we'll run it. Even if it's a little annoying. So we're right here, I believe. We're right here, and it calls campaign, initialize campaign, and then we hit our breakpoint, and the budget is at 800 value. So where does that come from? It comes from the test, right? And we can do continue. And now, I guess we're right here again. So we create a new campaign, pass through 800, and then again, we're right here. We say budget, all right? And we're about to do self, this campaign object, dot budget. Like, give this campaign object a budget equal to the budget that's getting passed through. And that's what this code does right here. And now you can see we're over here, right? You can kind of see that assert campaign budget. We're in test campaign.py line 10. So basically we just initialize the campaign. We pass through 800. That like caught it over here, took that 800 argument, took this 800 argument, and then set this attribute of self.budget equal to that 800 value. And now that that got finished, we're back here. We're about to check that this campaign argument, campaign object, right, has this attribute of 800. Right, we can just do continue. I'm just going to exit so that it doesn't run through all that, but you can see that passed the test. So the key thing again is like kind of read it before and after. We're initializing this object with this value, and the result is it now has this property of 800. Now we get to the next thing, which is we're initializing it with a string. And you can see that if you read the test initialize converts a string to float, right? So even if we pass through a string here, somehow it should set the budget to a float of that, probably of that same value. So let's run it. And we get the same error, and we can see that assert string equals float, and you can start to see, like, if you can start to see that this is not converting it to a float. So how do we do this? Well, you pass through 800. This is the budget. And now we probably should turn that into a float first and then assign it equal to the budget. Right, and now we have 3 passing. We kind of see the next thing over here, right? Campaign.setRevenue. So this is like a standard thing in programming, like getter and setter methods. Normally you'll write a method that sets attributes on an instance, right? Like you can just nakedly, like, right, you can just, let me show you. So right here, you can see we created this campaign object, and if you do campaign.dunderdict, right, we have these attributes here, and you can just create whatever attributes you want. You can just do campaign.whatever equals whatever, and that will set it. Like, right, we kind of just set an attribute just by putting a dot notation and setting whatever value we want. But that feels messy, right? It's not like telling us how we're supposed to, like what attributes make sense for this kind of object. So normally what you do is you create like setter methods, right? So this is saying, hey, we have a method, we're going to create a method called setRevenue that, guess what it's going to do? Like, what's the before and after? It seems like after I pass through this value, I have a new attribute called revenue equal to 1,000. So let's do that. So if you call setRevenue, the result passing through 1,000, the result should be having a revenue attribute that equals 1,000, right? You see what, like, that's really how you want to read this stuff. So if we call setRevenue, def setRevenue, we know we always need the word self, right? If we're inside of a class. And then what do? This takes an argument of revenue, and then the result is that it's going to create, now we're going to have on this campaign object a new attribute called revenue. So that would be self.revenue equals the revenue you pass through. Self.revenue equals the revenue you pass through. So these tests, like, you want to read them like a story, right? Like the setup is, okay, we'll create a new campaign object. It seems like we'll initialize some data. This is just like setup, right? It's like the intro. We can skip this, essentially. It's not, this is like the meat of it though. Now I'm going to call this setRevenue, and the result is this. This is the before and after. All right. So one other thing to notice, this isn't about a return value, right? I'm not checking that this returns something. I'm checking that the object itself has been transformed. I'm checking that this object previously didn't have a revenue attribute and afterwards it does, and it's set to this value. So I don't have to, there's no return value here. I don't need it really. So I can just run PyTest, and now I have a new passing thing. If we read the next test, notice here there is, this is checking for a return value, right? With this one, we're not asserting that the return value of this equals something else, right? But here we are checking, oh, this profit thing, when I call profit, I'm going to get 200, right? And you can, again, make sense of it. This is the budget, right? 800. This is the revenue, 1,000. So it makes sense that this profit thing probably looks at the budget and looks at the revenue and calculates the profit. So we kind of saw these are setter methods. All they do is take in a value and and change an attribute on the object. This is, you can kind of think of it as a getter or just like a calculator, right? It performs like a calculation for you. So here we're going to say, okay, when I call this profit method, it's going to calculate the profit. It's going to calculate 1,000 revenue minus budget. It seems like it equals the profit. Def profit self. We always need that word self. And then now what is it going to do? If I just do revenue minus profit and return this, you can see it's already complaining to me because these are these are local variables. This is inside this method, and we're not accessing attributes on the instance. To access attributes on the instance, let's put a breakpoint here. So we're going to run this code, and we're finally going to hit our breakpoint when we call this profit method right here. Okay, let's run PyTest. So you can see here we are, campaign.py line 10 profit. So how are we going to get that profit? Well, if you look at self.dunderDict, right? Self is this particular object, right? We're calling profit on this object. So self is going to be this campaign instance. So now if I do self.dunderDict, you can see it has these attributes. So if you just type revenue, that doesn't work, That's not defined inside here. What do we have to do? We have to do self.revenue, right? This instance is revenue minus self.budget. Well, that's equaling 200. So this is what I should probably be throwing at the walls of the function. And then run it, see if it works. All right, and now we have, it seems like more passing. Okay. Does that start to make sense? I think there were original instructions with this, but it is good practice to be able to read the tests and read the tests as documentation. And it's you're using all the context clues you can get. Some of it is before and after. And then some of it is thinking in the real world. Okay, what's profit? Well, profit is the revenue minus the cost, right? Questions about this? I didn't want to go through the whole thing, but questions? Put in breakpoints. Even if, I think that's something you should get used to, is just putting in breakpoints as a way to, make it easier. Even if, like I said, even if you don't have to, just get used to putting breakpoints everywhere. And also just to understand how one thing triggers the other. Right? Okay, and then when you get to the next thing, let's get to here. This is tricky. Oops. School objects lab. Okay, so this has something new, which is this weird thing, this star star. Okay. And basically what's happening, what you can kind of see, is that it's passing through a dictionary, and somehow that's like an okay way. Like we can just pass through this entire dictionary. Really what we're trying to do is say, if I pass through a dictionary, this star star means that you can treat it as, you see here you have like key value. Well, you guys remember that we can do like name equals Henry Street, right? If we did this, you would know how this works, right? Name equals Henry Street, reading average equals 355. The star star, I'm going to show this in a Colab, is equivalent. Let me show this in the Colab. It'll make more sense. Okay, so if you do class school def, and let's say there's a nid, and we'll just say like the school name, and then like the city. Self.name equals the name, self.city equals the city. Then we create a new school, and one way of creating a new school is to set like the name is Thomas Edison, and the city is New York City. All right, and let's call this Tom. Right, and I'm putting I should put named attributes. So do city equals that. And if you look at it, com.dunderdict, right, we properly set these attributes. Now another way to do this is you can did I mess that up? Okay, you can pass through a dictionary. So let's do this. We'll do name equals GW, and the city is Philadelphia. All right, and we'll call these just my attributes. So this is a dictionary, and now I'll even reverse the order. So I'll put the city first, and I'll put the name second. And you can now initialize a school. Now, if you just pass through the attributes, that's not going to work. Why? Because it's going to say, well, it thinks this entire dictionary is the first argument, and nothing is the second argument, right? Like this is going to break right from the get-go. Yeah, it says I'm missing an argument city because it thinks that you're passing through this entire dictionary as just one argument. But what you can do is you can do this star star. And what star star will do is it'll be equivalent to using keyword arguments. So it's going to read this as city equals Philadelphia, comma, second argument, name equals George Washington. So let's call this GW. You can see already that worked. GW.dunderdict. So even though we had these reversed, right, it read this as keyword arguments. Just like this name equals this. Here, this time I'm passing through a dictionary. We can do it directly if you want. And it's taking this dictionary and it's saying, oh, this is really city equals Philadelphia. Name equals. That's what this star star does for us. Okay. So it turns a dictionary into keyword arguments. And you can, if we print it, right, you can see that if we print, name. Right, you can see that it's taking this dictionary and now the city Philadelphia is coming in as Philadelphia. So that's what this star star thing is about. is I'm going to pass through a dictionary, and it's going to allow me to like be equivalent to this. All right, we'll just keep it there. There's a little bit more we can go through, but we'll just stay there for now. Questions about any of that? You guys can actually ask questions if you have any. Or things that you struggled with. I don't expect you to have this finished, by the way. You sure? All right. One thing that's kind of interesting about this, like this is really starting to become a project. Like if once you get to this Schoolab, like this is the way that you should be. You're creating instances, like school instances from each piece of data, from each, this starts as JSON, and you're turning this JSON into objects. And that's what you should start doing in your project as well. All right, so if you finish this, like now when you all hit your API, you can kind of see, all right, can you turn it into an object? Right, like for your projects, right? Turn the data into an object. And then you can write those query methods of, okay, find, answer the question, right? What movie did the best, or whatever, whatever your project is. But that's not, this is essentially where we're going with this. Okay, so we'll probably stay here. If you finish